Okay, back again another live stream broadcast or podcast or whatever it is. So basically, I'm in another intentional free time, weekly intentional free time as usual, which I already tried to utilize for good behavior recording for around more than 20 minutes. So it was a two recording with a similar amount of time. So yeah, that's the reason why it becomes more than 20 minutes, but it's still less than 30 minutes obviously. So to be honest, yesterday I basically have the unintentional free time as well, but all of the time is basically just spent for meeting a bi-weekly meeting in my main job of tasks, which obviously I need to join, even though it turns out that it is not really matter, since basically there are some technical issue related to the other teams which definitely block and make the meeting shorter than usual, even though yeah, I am still eventually join obviously, because yeah, even if I basically didn't do many kind of things, but it's still pretty much required, just in case there are something that's definitely I need to answer. So yeah, that's the reason why. And what else? Yeah, I always try to say that's the reason why. I don't know how many times that I basically will try to say it again in this live stream, but yeah, oh well, I didn't have many kind of vocabulary, obviously, because I'm not really a native language speaker that use English as my daily language. So even though yeah, if you talk about how I basically learn English, it's already since early in the childhood, perhaps. I don't know whether it is actually a correct sentences or not, but yeah, since I basically already tried to play games or even try to use some electronical devices since I was a kid, then yeah, most of those kind of thing is definitely in English language. Even though right now there is my own native language available for certain electronical devices, but it's just pretty weird when you basically see how every word in certain buttons or in certain interaction that translate into my own native language is just making me confused. So when I basically try to use a phone that basically have those kind of language, I try to change it into English first in order to see how to properly setting up the phone or the devices. So yeah, what else did I basically want to talk about? So last week I basically didn't do any kind of hangout, still didn't do any kind of college hangout, probably because the environment is still pretty hot to do hangout in the afternoon, especially when one of my friends who basically pretty lazy when it is pretty hot outside, even though yeah, some certain place here in Indonesia is already started to rain, but it's still pretty much not enough perhaps. So that's the reason why at some point it still feel pretty hot when you basically didn't use any kind of air conditioning. But yeah, it's I think it's getting better every day. So because yeah, the climate is probably already reaching the wet climate or cold climate for the northern hemisphere, obviously. So yeah, even though Indonesia is not really in the northern hemisphere, but yeah, the climate for some reason is still pretty much following how the northern hemisphere are trying to get in the end of the year. So yeah, they usually got winter. So Indonesia we got a raining season, so yeah, which is a little bit identical to cold weather, perhaps, because when the weather is raining, is obviously the temperature is colder than usual, since the sun heat was getting blocked by the cumulonimbus cloud. So that's the reason why during the season, every time that I basically try to do a hangout, I definitely need to carry an umbrella just in case, especially when I usually still use a public transportation to reach certain places that pretty near to the meetup point, which I usually do for the hangout. So yeah, what else that I basically want to talk about? So yeah, to be honest, there are so many things that I basically wanted to see, but it turns out, since I definitely still not have, I don't know, the opportunity, or the, I don't know how to say this, but yeah, the permission perhaps to do various kind of things, that most likely it is pretty hard because it located pretty far from what I live. So yeah, I'm still pretty much dependent to a certain transportation or accommodation. So that's the reason why, if I basically need to do it alone, I definitely feel so lazy to do it. If I basically need to do using the vehicle that I usually use for reaching near destination. So I don't know. So yeah, what else that I basically want to talk about? So I'm just not sure how long that I basically will need to wait until I finally able to focus on doing personal productivity, because for some reason I definitely need to do something that I basically not really know, perhaps in my main job of task, because it was something that I basically never done before, and try it is basically happened during the time that I basically got more busyness than usual, and right now it is already over, but I basically still need to fix something in order to prevent those for going to happen again when I basically got more busyness 2 weeks from now. So yeah, so the rest is just 2 weeks until I finally need to stand by for some false alarm that I just don't know whether it will still be happen or not, because yeah, for some reason unexpected things are just likely to happen in the middle of the night, which is pretty annoying. So yeah, that's the reason why, because most likely it's definitely a false alarm, because the number of requests is definitely pretty low. So that's the reason why the alert is just sensitively triggered during those kind of times. So yeah, what else? So yeah, instead of using, that's the reason why I basically try to use what else, even though yeah, those kind of words are pretty frequent to be used, because I just don't know what kind of other words that basically have the same meaning that make the podcast pretty much didn't sounds like repetition, because yeah, for some reason, since I basically don't really able to explain something in a pretty interesting way. So for some reason, the word that I use is basically pretty basic. So that's the reason why, once again, I always try to, I don't know, explain it in my own way, even though, yeah, it's definitely not really interesting to hear. Because, so I eventually call it as an unnecessary talks because, yeah, the time that I basically spend for creating this kind of podcast is already pretty long to be heard, but the main context or the core things that I try to explain is probably just a very little percentage of those durations. So yeah, so that is basically the necessary thing. So most of the things that I basically try to explain are just unnecessary because, yeah, it is just pretty hard to move from one context to another, and yeah, I basically try to explain it as coherent as possible. But yeah, in order to make it coherent, I basically try to do a repetition to the same word over and over again. So those kind of word is basically what makes most of the duration in the podcast. It seems to be pretty unnecessary. So yeah, it's already more than 12 minutes. I basically need to I don't know, cannot create more productivity, personal productivity thing first, since I basically need to do something that I must be done as usual. Besides, I'm not sure after I basically try to do that, I'm still able to create more personal productivity or not, because for some reason in the evening there are several meetings that I need to attend, perhaps, I'm not sure. Besides, I'm just not sure whether in the evening the interruption is also faster than usual, or it is actually still pretty long, like the last week, perhaps. I'm not sure. So yeah, for the native language podcast, since I basically didn't have any more articles on my main blog to be read and to be converted into a different kind of content, so I basically need to do this kind of things in my native language podcast, but not in the live stream, because yeah, I'm just too lazy to change the stream key over and over again, since I think the OBS didn't have, by default, didn't have easier accessible change of stream key to different kind of channels or even platforms. So that's, yeah. If I basically try to prevent speaking the same word over and over again, then it's just like, I don't know, a sudden silence of not know the appropriate word to basically end my sentences. And yeah, I think I don't have anything to say anymore, I guess. So the native language podcast is usually have a description of the articles that I try to read. So if I no longer try to read an article, then the description will probably, like many of the content that I try to upload in this channel, which is pretty short, or it is pretty template description that I always try to reuse over and over again, just with the very little of adjustment that I just wanted to make it better. But yeah, it's nowhere near the uniqueness that I basically try to put as the description in the native language podcast during the times that where the articles is still available. So, but yeah, I'm not sure about the first or the early episodes of the native language podcast, because during that time I basically tried to read from the notes that I basically try to prepare. So yeah, it should be not long as well, even though obviously if you talk about the articles that I try to write on my main blog that was written in my own native language, it's not all of them are long article as well. Even most of them are basically only need to read for around 1 minute of reading. So yeah, it's still considerably very short articles. But yeah, I basically try to amplify or to extend it until 10 minutes of duration, the maximum duration that I can use or that I can edit on the free online video editors. So yeah, I think that's all that I can say. It's already almost 17 minutes, so yeah, hopefully I'm basically able to do this again in regular weekly intentional free time tomorrow, but in the evening, so it's definitely shorter than